My brother's ex manipulated my entire family into thinking I was crazy after I found his hidden letter proving she murdered him for insurance money. So I connected with her past victim's family and exposed her deadly pattern. I was 15 when my brother's pregnant ex-girlfriend moved in. My brother had been gone for 3 weeks, a sewer slide that no one saw coming. One day we were planning what movie to watch on New Year's Eve, and 6 days later I was standing outside the funeral home, crying into my comfort blanket. I was sitting at our kitchen table when Mom announced that Sarah, Connor's ex-girlfriend, would be moving in. "She's 4 months pregnant," Mom said. Like that explained everything. It's what Connor would have wanted. "Let's make her feel welcome." So I tried to make her feel welcome. When Sarah walked in carrying just 2 suitcases, her hand on her small bum, I helped her wheel them into the house. She never called our parents Mom and Dad when Connor was alive. But suddenly she was sobbing into my mother's arms saying, "Mom, I don't know what I'd do without you." They gave her Connor's old room immediately. At dinner she took his seat without asking, and Dad instructed me to give her Connor's favorite mug for her decaf coffee. "I know this is hard, sweetie," Mom said when she caught me staring, "but Sarah and the baby need us." The next few months were hell. I buried the unbearable pain of grief under good grades and fake smiles. I bit my tongue when my parents transferred my entire college fund to Connor's baby's fund without a second thought. When Sarah asked to wear Connor's clothes, I said yes through gritted teeth. Said it made her feel closer to him. My parents gave her everything, his car, his laptop, access to his bank accounts, all for the baby. Mom didn't notice when I started failing my classes and wearing long sleeves. She was too busy planning baby showers and prenatal appointments. Meanwhile, I was playing the same Beatles song on my Alexa for hours every day. "Here Comes the Sun," Connor's favorite. Every night at dinner, I smiled while she sat in his chair and told stories about him that didn't sound right. I still started iMessage games in our chat every night, even though I knew I was just playing with myself. And my parents screamed at me for going to the cemetery and refusing to let go of the past. So I always went alone with my blanket, napping beside his grave like it was his bedroom floor. Sarah tried to give me advice like Connor would have, but Connor never gave advice. He just listened and made stupid jokes until I felt better. The breaking point came on what would have been Connor's 18th birthday. The Arctic Monkeys, Connor's favorite band, was having a concert near us, and I was planning to scream all the lyrics to his favorite songs. But when I mentioned it at breakfast, Sarah's face tightened. "Actually, I've already rented the lake spot for my gender reveal party on the same day. Connor would want us celebrating new life, not dwelling on death." I begged my parents to let me go to the concert and the gender reveal party. Mom looked at me like I was insane. "How could you try to ruin this for Sarah?" Dad slammed his coffee mug down. "Connor's baby is our future. You need to stop living in the past. You will be at the party. You will smile and you will stop making everything about your grief." Something in me finally snapped. Connor didn't even want kids yet. He told me he wanted to wait until, well, Connor isn't here to want anything, is he? Sarah interrupted, her perfect widow mask slipping for just a second. I knew there was no reasoning with them. So I sighed and went to take a depression nap in my room. When I woke up at 1 a.m., I staggered over to my shelf to look at my hidden box of Connor's things. Except it wasn't there. It was like it had disappeared. Concert tickets, photos, the silly friendship bracelet he made me had all vanished into thin air. I brought it up at breakfast the next day. Sarah just smiled. "I donated them because you were having trouble letting go." My parents nodded approvingly. I took another 4-hour nap. The gender reveal was torture. Sarah announced the baby would be Connor Jr., Zarenya, and everyone cooed while I wanted to scream. That night, while following my routine of stalking his Facebook and wondering what I could have done differently, I realized something. I didn't want to forget Connor's voice. So I did what any rational teenager would do in that situation. I broke into his laptop to look for audio files he might have of him talking. But what I found made me sick. Browser history full of searches about leaving a pregnant partner. Screenshots of Sarah's text to someone saved as mic work with hearts and planning meetups. Connor had been tracking her location. He'd figured out she was lying about where she went. There were journal entries about feeling trapped, about Sarah mentioning his life insurance policy too often, about his coffee tasting weird. The last entry was dated the day before he died. The letter in our spot. Our spot. The attic crawl space where we used to hide during Mom and Dad's fights. I waited until 2 a.m. and crept up there, using my phone's flashlight. Behind the loose board where we used to stash candy, there was an envelope with my name on it. "If you're reading this, something happened to me. I need you to know the truth about Sarah and the baby." My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. Connor's handwriting stared back at me, slightly shaky but unmistakably his. "The baby isn't mine." I overheard Sarah on the phone with Marcus admitting it, and I've been recording her drugging my coffee. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I pressed my hand over my mouth to muffle the sob threatening to escape. Connor had known. He'd been trying to protect himself, trying to gather evidence, and somehow it had all gone wrong. Footsteps creaked on the stairs below. I shoved the letter under my mattress just as my bedroom door opened without a knock. Sarah stood there in one of Connor's old hoodies, her hand resting on her bump. "Can't sleep either?" she asked sweetly, but her eyes scanned my room systematically, taking in every detail. The open closet door, the slightly displaced rug where I'd been pacing, the way I sat too stiffly on my bed. She walked in uninvited and sat down next to me, the mattress dipping under her weight. I fought the urge to shift away as she sighed dramatically. "I've been having nightmares about Connor," she said, watching my face carefully. "He told me you two had a special hiding spot where you used to play as kids." My blood turned to ice. "The attic." She knew about the attic. I forced myself to shrug casually. "We had lots of hiding spots when we were little. Kid stuff." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "He was very specific about this one. Said you two would hide there during your parents' fights." Such a sweet memory. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. Sarah's gaze followed mine to the screen, but I grabbed it before she could see. "You should get some sleep," I said, standing up. "Big day tomorrow with your doctor's appointment." She didn't move. "You know, grief can make people imagine things, see conspiracies where there aren't any. Your parents are worried about you." "I'm fine." "Are you?" She stood slowly, smoothing down Connor's hoodie. "Because they mentioned you've been saying some concerning things. About me. About the baby." The threat hung in the air between us. I stayed silent. "Sleep well," she said finally, pausing at my door. "Oh, and that loose floorboard in your closet? You might want to fix that. Wouldn't want you to trip." After she left, I checked my phone with shaking hands. The text was from Jade, my best friend, using a number I didn't recognize. "Got burner phone. My sister Emma saw Sarah at hospital pharmacy buying Ambien with Connor's prescription 2 days before he died. Meet me before school." I barely slept, clutching Connor's letter under my pillow. When morning came, I dragged myself downstairs to find my parents and Sarah already at the breakfast table. "Perfect timing," Mom said brightly. "We have something to discuss." Dad cleared his throat. "Sarah brought to our attention that you've been struggling more than we realized. We've decided family therapy would be beneficial. Starting today," Sarah added, buttering her toast. "I've already made the appointment with Dr. Mills. She's wonderful. We were in the same sorority." "Of course she was." "I have school," I protested. "Already cleared it with the principal," Mom said. "This is more important." At school, I'd barely made it to my locker when the intercom crackled to life. "Please send the following student to the principal's office immediately." My name echoed through the hallway. Other students stared as I walked to the office, my face burning. Principal Johnson sat behind his desk looking concerned, with Miss Rodriguez, the school counselor, beside him. "Have a seat," he said gently. "We received a call from your family about some concerning behavior. Ms. Rodriguez will be checking in with you daily from now on." "What concerning behavior?" I asked. Ms. Rodriguez leaned forward. "Your stepmother mentioned you've been fixated on conspiracy theories about your brother's death, making accusations. We want to help you process your grief in a healthy way." "Stepmother." The word made me want to scream. "She's not my stepmother," I said quietly. "And I'm processing fine." They exchanged looks. "Daily check-ins," Principal Johnson repeated. "Non-negotiable." After school, I rushed home to find Sarah in Connor's room. She had his journals spread across the bed, systematically tearing out pages. "What are you doing?" I lunged for the nearest journal. She grabbed my wrist, her nails digging in hard enough to bruise. "These pages might upset your parents." "I'm protecting them. Those are Connor's private thoughts." Her grip tightened, and she leaned close enough that I could smell her perfume, something floral and cloying that made my stomach turn. "You don't want to make me upset," she hissed. "Not in my condition." I yanked my arm away, cradling my bruised wrist. Several torn pages fluttered to the floor. Entries about bruises on his arms, about feeling trapped, about Sarah's violence. That evening, my phone lit up with notifications. Sarah had started a group text with our extended family. Concerned about our sweet girl's mental health. She's been having delusions about me and making wild accusations. Grief manifests in strange ways. Please be patient with her during this difficult time. Uncle Pete replied immediately. I've noticed her acting strange too. Happy to help get her the help she needs. Aunt Catherine. Poor thing. Losing Connor has clearly been too much. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I opened Connor's Google account on my laptop. I still remembered his password from when he'd asked me to check his email once. His location history was still there. Screenshots flew from my phone to the cloud as I documented Sarah's pharmacy visits. Her patterns. Her timeline. My fingers moved frantically. knowing she could change the passwords any moment. A message popped up from Marcus's girlfriend, Becca. "Hey, weird thing. Sarah just showed up at our apartment demanding to talk to Marcus. He locked himself in the bedroom and won't come out. She was pounding on the door, screaming about needing to get their story straight. Thought you should know." The next day's therapy session was a nightmare. Dr. Mills, a polished woman who looked like she'd stepped out of Sarah's Instagram feed, sat across from us with a sympathetic smile. "I understand you've been struggling with some jealousy issues," she said to me. "It's natural to feel displaced when a new baby is coming." "I'm not jealous," I said flatly. Sarah dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "She's been saying I hurt Connor, that I'm lying about the baby. It's been so hard." Dr. Mills made notes. Delusional thinking can be a symptom of complicated grief. These fantasies about Sarah stem from your inability to accept Connor's choice. I noticed she'd already written something before I'd even spoken. Pulling out my phone, I pretended to check the time but snapped a photo of her notes. Later, zooming in, I'd see she'd twisted everything. An old text to Connor saying I hate her about our English teacher was recorded as being about Sarah. After the session, Sarah created a shared family calendar on everyone's phones. Every minute of my day was scheduled. "For your safety," she explained to my parents. "So we know where you are if you need help. School, therapy, home, study time, supervised, family dinner, bed by 9 p.m., no deviations allowed." When Jade tried to come over that weekend, Sarah met her at the door. "I'm sorry, but she's not allowed visitors right now," Sarah said sweetly. "She's been having some mental health challenges, and her therapist thinks socializing with people who enable her fixations would be harmful." "Enable what?" Jade demanded. My parents appeared behind Sarah. "Please respect our family's privacy during this difficult time," Dad said firmly. I watched from my window as Jade left, her face twisted with frustration. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. "Meet me at the old playground on Maple. Midnight. Bring Connor's journal photos. J." The next week was suffocating. Ms. Rodriguez dutifully checked on me daily, her concern genuine but misguided. During one session, she mentioned Sarah had called worried about threats I'd allegedly made. "I'm mandated to report these concerns," she said gently, "but I want to hear your side." "I never threatened anyone," I said. She showed me an email from Sarah with screenshots of texts I'd never sent, messages threatening to hurt her and the baby if she didn't leave. They were clearly fabricated, but how could I prove it? That night, I snuck out through my window and met Jade at the abandoned playground. She pulled me into a fierce hug. "I believe you," she whispered. "About everything." I showed her the photos I'd taken of Connor's journal entries. The bruises on his arms, the dated entries about Sarah's violence. One entry made us both gasp. She threatened to make it look like I hurt her if I try to leave. Showed me bruises, she gave herself. Said no one would believe me. She's done this before. There was a photo paper clipped to the page. Sarah's arms covered in bruises, but the angle was all wrong for someone else to have caused them. "This is evidence of blackmail," Jade breathed. "We need to document everything." We spent an hour photographing every page, every entry, uploading everything to multiple cloud accounts. Jade gave me one of her burner phones to keep hidden. "My mom's friend is a lawyer," she said. "We're going to figure this out." Walking home, I felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe Connor's truth would finally come out. The next morning, Jake, one of Connor's co-workers, pulled me aside at the grocery store. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "The week before Connor died, Sarah came to our work crying about him abusing her. Made a huge scene. But after she left, I was in the parking lot on break and saw her in her car. She was laughing. Like, really laughing. Taking selfies. It was weird." "Would you tell my parents that?" I asked desperately. He shifted uncomfortably. "I don't want to get involved with family drama." "Please, Connor was your friend." He sighed. "I'll think about it." I started noticing patterns in Sarah's behavior. Morning sickness only during arguments. Energy for shopping trips but too tired to help with chores. The bump that seemed to change sizes depending on what she wore. During family dinner, she pushed her food around, claiming nausea. "The baby's been so active today," she said, rubbing her stomach. But when Mom suggested she lie down, Sarah perked up immediately when her phone buzzed. "Oh, Marcus is having a crisis. I should call him, for closure." She practically skipped out of the room. Later that week, Marcus' sister reached out through Jade. "We met at a coffee shop 2 towns over. My friend's brother died last year," she said quietly. Tom Chen. Similar circumstances. Pregnant girlfriend moved in with his family after. She left town when people started asking questions. My blood ran cold. What was her name? Jennifer Walsh. But Tom mentioned she'd changed it once before. I created an anonymous blog that night, documenting everything. The timeline. The evidence. Connor's journal entries. I posted from the library computer during my supervised study time, clearing the browser history after each session. When Sarah tried to access my social media accounts, two-factor authentication blocked her. I played dumb when she complained to my parents about technical issues. Maybe the baby brain is making you forget passwords, I suggested innocently. Her mask slipped for just a second, pure rage flashing in her eyes before the sweet smile returned. A few days later, Mrs. Chen from down the street stopped me while I was taking out the trash. "I've been meaning to tell someone," she said quietly. "That night Connor died, Sarah was at my house. Borrowed my car for an emergency around 2 a.m. Brought it back 2 hours later with mud on the tires. Thought it was strange. The pieces were falling into place. The ambient, the borrowed car. The timeline that didn't match Sarah's story. At dinner, Sarah announced she'd scheduled more family therapy. Dr. Mills thinks intensive treatment might be necessary, she said, not looking at me. There's a wonderful facility that specializes in grief-related psychosis. My parents exchanged worried looks. Let's see how the outpatient therapy goes first, Mom said carefully. Sarah's hand went to her stomach. I just worry about the stress affecting the baby. Connor would want his child to grow up in a peaceful environment. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Connor's child, the baby that wasn't even his. That night, I heard Sarah on the phone in Connor's room, her voice low and urgent. The kid knows something. No, I can't just leave yet. The insurance money. I know what we agreed, but this family has more than... Don't threaten me. I pressed my ear against the wall, trying to hear more, but she must have moved away from the wall. The next morning, I woke to find my bruised wrist photographed and documented in a medical file on the kitchen table. Evidence of self-harm, Sarah explained sadly to my parents. Dr. Mills says it's escalating. I pulled up my sleeve. The bruises were clearly finger marks, but the photos were taken at an angle that made them look self-inflicted. She grabbed me, I protested, when I tried to save Connor's journals. Sweetheart, Mom said gently. Sarah showed us the security footage from the hallway. You were alone when you went into Connor's room. What's security footage? We don't have cameras inside. Dad sighed. The new system Sarah installed, for safety. I felt the walls closing in. She was rewriting reality, and everyone believed her version. But Connor's letter was still hidden under my mattress. His truth was still there, waiting. And somewhere out there, Tom Chen's family had their own questions about a woman who might have been Jennifer Walsh before she became Sarah. The battle for Connor's truth was just beginning. I recognized Sarah's pattern immediately. Public concern, private threats, isolation tactics. Exactly what Connor's journal had described. The realization made my skin crawl as I watched her performance at breakfast, dabbing at fake tears while explaining to my parents how worried she was about my deteriorating mental state. Emma, the hospital nurse who was Jade's sister, texted me during lunch period. She'd checked the pharmacy records and confirmed Sarah had picked up Connor's Ambien prescription the day he died. Security footage showed her leaving with a full bottle, enough to kill someone if mixed with alcohol. The timestamp matched perfectly with Mrs. Chen's account of Sarah borrowing her car that night. Sarah must have sensed the walls closing in because her next move was calculated. She showed up at Jade's mother's house with a box of homemade cookies and tears streaming down her face. Jade watched from her bedroom window as Sarah tried to convince her mother that I was having a mental breakdown, that Jade was enabling dangerous delusions, but Jade had already warned her mother about Sarah's manipulation tactics. Her mother politely but firmly told Sarah that she trusted her daughter's judgment and asked her to leave. That small victory gave me hope, but I knew I needed to protect the evidence. I carefully removed Connor's letter from under my mattress and photographed every word with Jade's burner phone. The original went into a tampon box in my bathroom, the one place Sarah wouldn't search. I uploaded the photos to 3 different cloud accounts, each with different passwords, then cleared the phone's history. My parents decided to take me to the police station for what they called a wellness check. They explained to the officer that they were concerned about my mental health, that I'd been making accusations about Sarah. The officer listened patiently, but explained that without evidence of immediate danger to myself or others, there was nothing he could do. I sat there silently, knowing that speaking up would only make me look more unstable. Connor's gaming friend Derek had been following my anonymous blog. He sent a private message offering to share chat logs from Connor's final days. Connor had confided in him about feeling scared, about Sarah's mood swings, about finding bruises on his arms he couldn't explain. Derek had screenshots of everything, including Connor's message the night before he died saying he was going to leave Sarah and stay with a friend. Marcus' sister showed me something that made my blood run cold. She'd found Sarah's old social media profiles under the name Jennifer Walsh. The photos were definitely her, just with different colored hair. There were posts about her boyfriend Tom, photos of them together, and then suddenly nothing. The account went dark right around the time Tom died from an accidental odd. She also had a newspaper clipping about Tom's death. The article mentioned he'd recently increased his life insurance policy and that his girlfriend was pregnant. Sound familiar? The parallels were too obvious to ignore. Same substances, same circumstances, same pattern of moving in with a grieving family. When my parents confronted me about the blog posts that were starting to circulate among Connor's friends, I stayed calm. I showed them one specific entry from Connor's journal where he wrote about being scared, about Sarah mentioning his life insurance policy during arguments, about feeling like he couldn't leave. Dad's face changed as he read Connor's familiar handwriting describing his fear. Sarah's response was swift. She announced she was moving up the wedding to my father. She claimed it would honor Connor's memory and provide stability for the baby. The ceremony would be small, family only, in just 2 weeks. Once she had legal rights as Dad's wife, she'd have access to everything: the house, the bank accounts, the life insurance policies on our entire family. Jake finally worked up the courage to tell my parents what he'd witnessed. He described Sarah's performance at Connor's workplace, how she'd sobbed about abuse in front of everyone, then laughed and took selfies in her car afterward. He showed them security footage from the parking lot that backed up his story. Mom's face went pale as she watched Sarah's transformation from victim to victor in the span of minutes. Sarah's mask started slipping more frequently. When I refused to be in the wedding party, she cornered me in the hallway and snarled that no one had believed Connor either. The words escaped before she could stop them, an admission that she'd done this before. She quickly covered by claiming she meant no one believed Connor about wanting to wait to have kids. But we both knew what she'd really meant. Mom began asking questions. Why did Sarah need access to Connor's life insurance so urgently? Why was she pushing for such a quick wedding? Why did her stories about Connor keep changing? She pulled me aside one evening and asked about my concerns. For the first time in months, she actually listened. Marcus finally agreed to meet with me. He was terrified of Sarah but knew he needed to tell the truth. He revealed that Sarah had admitted during their affair that she was already pregnant when she met Connor. She'd targeted him specifically because she knew about his family's money, about the life insurance policy his parents had taken out. Marcus had text messages proving everything, including Sarah begging him to run away with her the night before Connor died. Dad started paying attention to details he'd previously ignored. Sarah's stories about Connor didn't match the son he'd known for 17 years. Connor supposedly told her things he'd never mentioned to his family, had opinions that contradicted everything Dad knew about him. The more Dad thought about it, the less sense it made. Security footage from our neighbor's doorbell camera became the smoking GN. It showed Sarah leaving our house at 2 a.m. the night Connor died, just as Mrs. Chen had said. She returned at 4 a.m., plenty of time to have driven to Connor's apartment and back. Her alibi that she'd been asleep in the guest room all night was completely destroyed. Jade risked being grounded to maintain our communication. She snuck me a second burner phone when the first one's battery started dying, kept copies of all the evidence on flash drives hidden around her room, and coordinated with a growing network of people who were starting to see through Sarah's lies. Mrs. Chen offered to let me study at her house in the afternoons. It became my safe haven where I could meet with allies, plan our next moves, and work on documenting the truth without Sarah's surveillance. Mrs. Chen had never liked Sarah, had always found her tears too convenient and her grief too performative. Despite having numerous opportunities to plant false evidence or manipulate the situation in my favor, I refused. I wanted Connor's truth to come out, but I wanted it to come out honestly. Every piece of evidence was real, every witness statement genuine. I wouldn't stoop to Sarah's level of deception. During one family dinner, Sarah contradicted herself about the last time she'd seen Connor. First she said it was the morning he died, then changed it to 2 days before, then back to that morning. My parents exchanged worried glances across the table. The cracks in her story were becoming impossible to ignore. Marcus agreed to meet me secretly at a diner 3 towns over. He was shaking as he told me everything. Sarah had been with him the night before Connor died, begging him to leave town with her. She'd said Connor was getting suspicious, that her plan was falling apart. She'd cried about being trapped, about needing money to start over. Marcus had refused to help her, and she'd left in a rage. Sarah's carefully maintained image began cracking in public. Jake, Mrs. Chen, and Emma started comparing notes at the grocery store, their hushed conversations drawing attention. Other neighbors mentioned strange things they'd noticed. Sarah taking long phone calls in her car, meeting with unknown men at odd hours, the way she'd smile when she thought no one was looking. A clear pattern emerged through everyone's observations. Sarah targeted young men with life insurance policies and families with money. She claimed abuse when questioned, used pregnancy to gain sympathy, and always positioned herself as the victim. The same story, different families, different names. Jade's family offered to pay for a lawyer consultation. Her mother had become invested in helping after Sarah's attempted manipulation. The lawyer listened to our evidence and said that while criminal charges would be difficult without more proof, the family could certainly take civil action to protect their assets. My anonymous blog gained traction among Connor's friends. They started sharing their own strange encounters with Sarah, how she'd pumped them for information about Connor's finances, how she'd tried to isolate him from his support system, how different Connor had seemed in his final weeks. The comments section became a repository of small details that painted a damning picture. When confronted about timeline inconsistencies during dinner, Sarah lost control for just a moment. She blurted out that Connor was going to leave her with nothing, then quickly blamed it on pregnancy hormones. But the damage was done. My parents heard the anger in her voice, saw the calculation in her eyes. My parents finally apologized for not listening to me sooner. Mom admitted she'd suspected something was off, but wanted so badly to believe in the baby, in having a piece of Connor still with them. She'd chosen the comfortable lie over the difficult truth, and now she was seeing the cost of that choice. Sarah realized she was losing control. I watched from my window as she paced in the backyard, making frantic phone calls to unknown numbers. She started packing valuable items from around the house into boxes in her room. Connor's watch, Mom's jewelry that had been put away for safekeeping, electronics that could be easily sold. Marcus's sister confirmed what we'd suspected. Tom Chen was her friend's brother, and the pattern was identical. Same substances, same stage sewers lied, same pregnant girlfriend who disappeared when questions got too uncomfortable. 2 deaths, 2 families destroyed, and Sarah had almost gotten away with it twice. I warned Marcus that he might be Sarah's next target if she couldn't salvage her current situation. He agreed to record any conversations with her going forward. Within days, she called him crying, begging for help, saying the family had turned against her. He recorded everything, including her admission that she needed money to disappear. Connor's friends created a group chat to share evidence. Jake's security footage, Emma's pharmacy records, Mrs. Chen's testimony, Derek's chat logs. It all painted a picture of a woman who had systematically planned Connor's murder. The timeline was damning when laid out sequentially. Sarah's attempts to turn the family against me backfired spectacularly. My parents discovered she'd been intercepting mail, hiding bills, and rerouting Connor's mail to a P.O. box she controlled. She'd been slowly draining his accounts, small amounts that wouldn't trigger alerts but added up over time. The real smoking GN came when Dad found Connor's sewers lied note in Sarah's jewelry box. She'd forgotten to destroy it, probably keeping it as insurance, but the handwriting was wrong. It used phrases from Connor's journals but lacked his natural flow. Dad knew his son's handwriting better than anyone, and this wasn't it. Extended family members started reaching out to apologize. Uncle Pete admitted Sarah had been feeding him lies about my mental health for months, playing on his concern to build a network of people who would support her version of events. He felt sick when he realized how he'd been manipulated. Tom's family had hired a private investigator after his death. They shared the report with us, and the similarities were undeniable. Same pattern of isolation, same financial exploitation, same convenient sewers lied after increasing life insurance. The investigator had tracked Jennifer Walsh's movements after Tom's death. She'd disappeared for 6 months before emerging as Sarah. Sarah's wedding planning became increasingly desperate. She needed legal rights before the truth fully emerged. She booked venues, ordered flowers, sent invitations, all while maintaining the facade of the grieving girlfriend honoring Connor's memory. But her rush to lock down legal status was transparent. During wedding dress shopping, Mom saw Sarah's true nature emerge. When the sales clerk made a minor mistake, Sarah erupted in rage, making a scene about incompetent service and threatening to destroy the shop's reputation online. The mask had slipped completely, revealing the calculating predator beneath. I realized the full scope of Sarah's plan. If she married Dad, she'd have access to everything. The house, the bank accounts, the life insurance policies on our entire family. We'd all become potential targets. The woman who'd called twice wouldn't hesitate to call again if it meant financial gain. Instead of confronting Sarah with aggression, I presented the evidence to my parents calmly and methodically. I let the facts speak for themselves. The timeline, the witnesses, the documentation. There was no emotion in my presentation, just truth laid bare. It was more powerful than any accusation. One by one, family members began refusing to attend the rushed wedding. They cited concerns about timing, the need to honor Connor's memory properly, discomfort with the circumstances. Sarah watched her carefully constructed plan crumble as her support system evaporated. The documented evidence became undeniable. Sarah's own words in recorded conversations with Marcus damned her. She'd admitted to choosing Connor because his family had money, and he was weak enough to control. She'd laughed about how easy it was to manipulate grieving families. She'd bragged about her previous success with Tom. My parents told Sarah the wedding was postponed indefinitely. She maintained her sweet facade, but I saw rage flash in her eyes. She knew the game was almost over, but she wasn't giving up yet. Predators like Sarah always had one more move to play. Sarah made a last, desperate manipulation attempt. She claimed she was having complications with the pregnancy, needed immediate financial help for medical care. She produced fake hospital bills, staged phone calls with doctors, even wore a larger prosthetic bump to seem further along. Dad asked for proof of the pregnancy complications, real documentation from real doctors. Sarah stalled, made excuses, claimed the hospital was slow with paperwork, but she couldn't produce anything because there were no complications with the pregnancy that didn't exist with Connor's child. Then Sarah's ex-boyfriend from before Connor showed up at our house. He demanded she return the money she'd stolen from him, revealed he was the baby's actual father. He had paternity test results, bank statements showing the theft, proof that Sarah had been planning this con for over a year. The family rallied around me for the first time since Connor's death. Mom apologized for choosing the comfortable lie over the difficult truth about Connor. She'd wanted so badly to believe in the baby, in having a piece of her son still with them, that she'd ignored every red flag. Tom's mother reached out directly. She offered to share their investigation files, promised to support any legal action we chose to take. She'd been waiting 2 years for another family to see through the woman who'd called her son. Finally, she had allies in seeking justice. I presented the complete timeline to a family meeting. 2 victims, same method, same exploitation of grieving families. The pattern was undeniable when laid out clearly. Sarah had refined her technique with each victim, but the core elements remained consistent. Marcus provided the final piece of evidence, a recording of Sarah admitting she'd chosen Connor because his family had money and he was weak enough to control. She'd laughed about how easy it was to manipulate grieving families, how profitable tragedy could be if you played it right. Mrs. Chen testified to our family that Sarah had specifically asked to borrow her car to visit Connor that night, claiming she needed to talk to him about the baby. The car was returned hours later with mud on the tires from the dirt road leading to Connor's apartment complex. Mrs. Chen had kept quiet out of respect for our grieving family, but now she understood the significance of that detail. The complete evidence file painted a devastating picture. Sarah's pattern stretched back at least 2 years, with 2 confirmed deaths, and Marcus as a potential third victim if her current plan had failed. The methodology was consistent. Target vulnerable young men with financial assets, claim pregnancy, exploit grieving families, then disappear when questions arose. Connor's USB drive was exactly where his letter said it would be, hidden in the spare tire compartment of his car. The files contained audio recordings of Sarah drugging his coffee, photos of bruises she'd inflicted on him, and a detailed timeline of her abuse. He'd been building a case to protect himself, documenting everything meticulously. The final recording was dated the night before he died, Sarah's voice clear as she threatened to claim he'd assaulted her if he tried to leave. Our family gathered in the living room for what would be the final confrontation. Dad served Sarah a formal eviction notice with Uncle Pete standing as witness. The document gave her 24 hours to vacate the premises. Sarah's face cycled through emotions, shock, rage, then calculated tears as she tried one last manipulation. She pulled out her phone, threatening to call the police and claim Dad had assaulted her. Her fingers hovered over the emergency number as she described the story she'd tell, how he'd grabbed her, pushed her, threatened the baby, the same tactics she'd used on Connor and Tom. My phone chose that exact moment to die. The recording of Sarah's confession to Marcus was on it, one piece of evidence that could immediately disprove her claims. The family wavered, uncertainty creeping back in as Sarah's tears intensified. She clutched her stomach, wailing about stress on the baby, about Connor's family turning against his child. Mom stepped forward, her face set with determination. She pointed at Sarah's midsection where the pregnancy bump had mysteriously vanished since yesterday. The prosthetic padding Sarah had been wearing was gone, forgotten in her panic. The supposedly 7-month pregnant woman had a completely flat stomach. While the family argued about next steps, I slipped out the back door and ran to Jade's house. My legs burned as I sprinted through familiar streets, knowing every second counted. Jade met me at the door with her laptop already open, the cloud backup of evidence ready. Her mother was on the phone with Tom's family, coordinating the final pieces. Tom's mother had been waiting for this moment. She sent our entire family email list a comprehensive file, the private investigator's report documenting Sarah's identity changes, financial records showing Tom's drained accounts, witness statements from his friends about Sarah's behavior before his death. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Sarah returned from the police station 2 hours later to find our entire family assembled in the living room, plus Tom's mother, who'd driven 3 hours to be there. The room was silent as she walked in, her confidence faltering as she recognized the woman whose son she'd called. Each person presented their evidence methodically. Jake showed the security footage of her laughing after her performance at Connor's work. Emma presented the pharmacy records and timeline of the Ambien purchase. Marcus's recorded confession played from multiple phones simultaneously, his voice shaking as he described Sarah's manipulation. Mrs. Chen detailed the borrowed car, the timeline that placed Sarah at Connor's apartment when he died. The final revelation came from Tom's mother. Sarah hadn't just called Tom for his insurance money. She'd only received a partial payout because the insurance company had been suspicious of the circumstances. She'd needed another victim, another family to exploit, which led her to Connor. The pattern would have continued with Marcus or someone else if we hadn't stopped her. Connor's friend who worked at a law firm arrived with a document that changed everything. Connor had updated his will a week before his death, leaving everything to me instead of Sarah. He'd known something might happen, had taken steps to protect his assets from her. The document was properly witnessed and notarized, completely legal and binding. The choice fell to me: pursue criminal charges that would mean a long traumatic trial, or let Sarah leave with the promise that we had enough evidence to bury her if she ever contacted our family again. I looked at my parents' exhausted faces, at Tom's mother who'd been fighting this battle for 2 years, at all the people who'd risked their relationships to help expose the truth. I chose to document everything with the police but asked them to prioritize our family's healing over a prolonged legal battle. The detective took our statements, collected the evidence, and assured us they'd be investigating both deaths. Tom's case would be reopened with this new information. Justice might be slow, but it would come. Sarah packed her belongings under the watchful eyes of our entire family. She tried one final manipulation, claiming she really was pregnant and we were throwing out a pregnant woman. No one even responded. The boy who cried wolf had exhausted all credibility. Her tears were met with stony silence. When she attempted to take Connor's laptop, claiming it contained photos of their relationship, Dad physically stepped between her and Connor's room. He pulled out his phone, ready to call the police himself if she didn't leave immediately. Sarah's mask finally dropped completely, her face twisting with rage. She turned to Mom, trying to appeal to maternal instinct, sobbing about being alone and pregnant. Mom stood firm beside Dad, their united front unshakable. Even Mom, who'd wanted so desperately to believe in Connor's baby, saw through the manipulation now. The evidence was too overwhelming, the lies too numerous. The police arrived to escort Sarah off the property after she refused to leave voluntarily. 2 officers stood by as she loaded her car, ensuring she only took her personal belongings. They served her with a no-contact order. If she came within 500 feet of any family member, she'd be arrested immediately. As her car pulled away, Sarah's true nature showed.